Good day, everyone. For today, I'll be talking about the endocrine system. So basically, dito, it comprises the different glands and the different hormones that are responsible in stimulating the processes inside the body of the animal. Here, um, let's try to define first what is the study of endocrine system as well as what are hormones. Kasi all throughout my discussion will be focused on hormones later on. So it says here that the study of endocrine system is basically the endocrinology. So it deals with the coordination of various body tissues by chemical mediators. Pag sinabi natin ng chemical mediators, these are the hormones. Kasi ang hormones ang pinakabida or yung main actor dito sa system na ito. Wherein these chemical mediators are being produced by restricted areas of the body of which these are the endocrine glands, which I will introduce it to you later on. So in the other hand, when we see endocrine system, this is a network of glands that secrete the hormones which provide chemical control of various functions of the body. Kasi as what I have been mentioning, these endocrine glands secrete chemical compounds which are called as hormones into the blood system. So ano ang ginagawa ng mga hormones na to? So they are basically chemical messengers which are carried in blood and it exerts a specific effect on target cells or tissues or organs and acts by binding to its specific receptor. So they usually circulate throughout the body of the animal to bring about physiologic responses sa animal mismo. Now let's move to the different important endocrine glands in the body of the animal. So we have 7. The hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, which is being subdivided into 3 lobes, the posterior, anterior, and intermediate. We have also the thyroid and parathyroid glands, the pancreas, the adrenal gland, which is subdivided into 2, the adrenal medulla and adrenal cortex. Then we have the gonads, which are the testes and then the ovaries. So let's try to discuss it one by one. First is the hypothalamus, kung saan ang pinakamalaking simula for the initiation of the hormones later on in the pituitary gland. So we have the GnRH or the gonadotrophin releasing hormone, kung saan ang ginagawa niya ay this hormone basically it stimulates the pituitary gland, specifically the anterior lobe, wherein etong si anterior pituitary gland, once na na-stimulate siya, this will be the time na ma-activate at ma-release yung mga hormones na manggagaling sa kanya, which I will discuss it later on after this slide. So in other hand, the hypothalamus receives information from the nervous system and initiates responses through the endocrine system. Kaya kung mapapansin ninyo later on, ay si hypothalamus yung first stimulator sa pituitary gland. Since if you could look at the photo below, attached to the hypothalamus is the pituitary gland composed of the posterior and anterior pituitary. Okay? So ang ginagawa ko lang dito is a basic na introduction to you for the endocrine system. We will not go deeper on it since this is only on-site introduction to animal science. Okay? Next, we have the first lobe of the pituitary, which is the anterior. Now, for this part, there are a lot of hormones na sinisikret niya. First is the somatotropic hormone, or basically called as the growth hormone. So ito yung hormone that is responsible for the growth and development ng mga bones as well as the body of the animal. So basically, since growth hormone, mainly the levels of this hormone ay mataas sa mga young animals since palaki pa lang ang mga to. However, sa mga adult animals, they still continue to secrete pa din pero mas mababa na lang yung level. So just to add it, sa mga adult animals, usually ang GH ay nagfa-function as a regular of metabolism during starvation ng animal or even hibernation. However, once na mataas ang nasikret ng animal for GH, this is the time that gigantism occurs. But take note that gigantism is for young animals. Pag adult naman na at mataas yung nasikret na GH, then ang term is acromegaly. Okay? So that is for the somatotrophic hormone. Now next we have the ACTH. Just correct it yung nasa module ninyo, that should be adrenocorticotropic hormone. So si ACTH, ang primary target cells niya ay yung mga cells of the adrenal cortex. Or pag sinabi natin na adrenal cortex, this is the outer region of the adrenal gland that produce glucocorticoids, which these glucocorticoids are steroid hormones that are main responsible also in the regulation of metabolism ng animal. Then next we have the TSH, or the thyroid stimulating hormone, which is also called as the thyrotropin, which these are, pag sinabi natin na ganito, these are endocrine cells of the thyroid that produce and release thyroxine and triiodothyronine when stimulated by TSH, of which I will discuss these hormones later on sa thyroid gland. Basta tatandaan, pag TSH, it stimulates the thyroid gland to release thyroid hormones. Also, we have the prolactin, or the luteotropic hormone, or LTH. So si prolactin, ang pinaka main function niya ay ini-stimulate niya yung milk production as well as milk secretion sa mammary gland ng animal. Now we have also the FSH, or the follicle stimulating hormone, which is basically, as sabi ko kanina, as the GnRH stimulates the anterior pituitary gland, si anterior would initiate the release now of one of the hormones, which is the FSH, that is being responsible for follicular and sperm development. So pag sinabi natin na follicular development, go back to your basic knowledge and the reproductive system. Ang main na nagpro-produce ng follicles ay ang ovaries, wherein this hormone stimulates the ovaries to produce follicles, specifically the Graafian follicles. And another function of this hormone is that it usually stimulates the production of estrogen. And if you could recall it in your general science sa reproductive system, ang estrogen is the hormone that is responsible for the development of the sex organs ng female animals as well as the secondary sex characteristics ng isang babae para sa kanyang desire to mate. So even though we are talking about animals here, basically this is just the same also in human, lalo na sa mga babae. Ganun lang din ang function ng estrogen. Then another function of FSH is it stimulates these seminiferous tubules doon sa testes ng lalaki. Wherein once na na-stimulate itong testes, then that is the time that is sperm development. No? Sperm development will occur. So yung testes will eventually produce sperm cells which are capable in fertilizing the ova of the females. So yun yung sa ginagawa ng FSH. Now for the LH, or the luteinizing hormone, this is basically responsible naman in ovulation of the maturing follicles na nag-release sa eggs na na-produce kanina through FSH. And dito, sa LH, ang main reason also for the production of progesterone, which is the hormone that is responsible for the pregnancy of the female animals. But in male animals, si LH ang responsible naman for the production of testosterone, which is the male sex hormone. So those are the hormones that are being produced through the anterior pituitary gland. Now for the posterior pituitary gland, we do have two hormones here, the oxytocin and then the vasopressin. So kindly correct also the spelling in your module. It should be anti-diuretic hormone. So si oxytocin, this is the hormone that is responsible for the milk ejection sa mga lactating animals. Pag sinabi natin na lactating, this of course ay yung mga nagpapasuso na mga animals. So in order to produce or to eject the milk that is being produced kanina from prolactin or the luteotropic hormone, this oxytocin induces the contraction ng kanyang target cells and organs, which are the smooth muscle fibers sa mammary gland ng animal, and as well as in the uterus. So as a result of these actions in the mammary gland, this oxytocin aids now in the phenomenon of milk letdown, wherein suckling or yung pagsuso ng young animal sa kanyang mother will stimulate the ejection of milk from the duct system of the mammary gland. So yun ang ginagawa ni oxytocin. Now for the ADH or the vasopressin, ang ginagawa naman nito is it controls water retention sa kidneys and it reduces the excretion of urine as well as it raises blood pressure. Now for the third lobe of the pituitary gland, which is the intermediate lobe, this basically functions in stimulating melanophore hormones. So ano itong mga hormones na to? So these are responsible doon sa coloring pigment ng skin ng katawan ng animals natin. So pag sa tao, pag mataas ang secretion nito, magiging darker ang kulay ng skin niya. So that is for the pituitary gland. Now we move forward to the next endocrine gland, which is the thyroid gland. So the thyroid gland, this is basically associated with the proximal part of the trachea near the thyroid cartilage of the larynx. Now this endocrine gland, it stimulates the hormones T4 and T3, which are the thyroxine and then the triiodothyronine, which stimulates the oxygen consumption of the cells in the body of the animal, and it regulates lipid and carbohydrate metabolism. So pag sinabi natin na lipids, we go back to the 6 basic nutrients that are being needed in the body, which is ang lipid ay also known as fat. Okay, so these two hormones are being responsible for the metabolism of these two nutrients in the body of the animal. And aside from the growth hormone kanina, these two hormones also help in growth and maturation of the animal. In fact, this gland is not essential in life, but if it is absent, then that would be the time that the animal will have a poor resistance to cold. Okay, magkakaroon din ng mental and physical slowing and the growth, which results to dwarfism. However, if sobra naman yung secretion ng hormones na to from the thyroid gland, this could lead to body wasting, nervousness, and excess heat production sa katawan ng animal. Then another fact also for these hormones ay almost all tissues of the body ay target nito, since almost all of them ay may receptor sa kanila. Now we have this term as hypothyroidism. So nagkakaroon ng ganito ang animals pag they do have thyroid hormone deficits, of which pag nangyari to, yung mga animal could not attain normal stature and have a variety of central nervous system abnormalities. So kailangan, one solution for this is dapat enough yung iodine content sa diet ng mga animals, since ang iodine is an important component of thyroxine. Then next gland, we have the parathyroid glands. So these are usually some aggregates or of endocrine tissues within or near the thyroid gland. So most of the domestic animals have 2 pairs of parathyroid glands, but the exact number and location is still vary with the different species. And commonly, 1 pair of this is visible outside dito sa thyroid gland, and is therefore designated as the external parathyroids. Then the second pair is usually often buried in the substance of the thyroid, which commonly known as the internal parathyroids. And to give you some insights on this, yung mga baboy natin, usually it lacks visible internal parathyroids. Now there are 2 distinct types of cells that make up the parathyroid. So we have the 2 types of parathyroid cells, the chief cells and then the oxyphil cells. So usually these chief cells are small and dark, as you could see in the picture. And these cells are mainly associated with the production of parathyroid hormone, or the PTH, or it is called as the parathormone. Now for the another cell, which are the oxyphil cells, based from the structure in the picture, the less numerous oxyphil cells are larger, with granular na cytoplasm and a small dark nucleus on it. And these cells have been described already sa mga horses and cattle, and even in human. But still, these are not yet found on other domesticated animal species. And to give you an insight, etong oxyphil cells, until now, the function of it is still unknown. So meaning, wala pang researches regarding kung ano ba talaga ang function nito sa katawan ng mga animals natin. Now we proceed to the hormone of this gland, which is the parathyroid hormone, or PTH, or the parathormone. So it says here that this hormone increases the level of calcium in the blood by mobilization of calcium from the bones. So ibig sabihin, this is the major controller of the level of blood calcium and phosphate in the body of the animal. So basically, this hormone it stimulates to release calcium and phosphate sa bones ng animals. Then another one is decreasing excretion of calcium and increasing excretion ng phosphate sa kidney. Thus, once na nagawa to, this will now promote the formation of active vitamin D by the kidney. And to give you a fact, kasi I know ang pagkakaalam ninyo ay, di ba, usually pag may mga bata sa bahay ninyo, yung mga bagong silang na sanggol, di ba pinapainit ng mga parents nyo? Kumbaga yung bata every morning, kasi sabi nila that is vitamin D. But yung vitamin D na sinasabi nila, that would not be consumed sa katawan ng tao and eventually sa animals ng directly. Na kapag nainitan ka in the morning, you will get vitamin D kaagad. That is a bluff. Hindi yung totoo. Kasi the forms of vitamin D consumed in the diet or produced in the skin by the action of the ultraviolet light and precursors, it's not the most active form of the vitamin. Kasi before na ma-absorb ng katawan yung vitamin D na to, this will be further metabolized in the liver to its second precursor form that is further metabolized again na naman in the kidneys to the most biologically active form na ng vitamin. So in the basic analysis, the vitamin D, ang end organ na magme-metabolize to produce the active form of it para ma-absorb ng katawan ng tao or ng animal ay yung kidneys. And the basic form ng vitamin D na ready for absorption is called as the calcitriol. So etong PTH ang nagpro-promote for the formation of this metabolite in the kidney. And alam naman natin that vitamin D is very important sa katawan since ang main function nito is to retain calcium in the body of the animal. Okay, so I hope naintindihan ninyo yung process for the metabolism of vitamin D coming from the diet and as well as in the ultraviolet light. The next endocrine gland ay yung pancreas. Okay, si pancreas, it could be either endocrine or exocrine gland. Ano ang difference nito? When we say exocrine gland, it basically secrete yung mga substances or the pancreatic juices which contain digestive enzymes doon sa duct system. Pag endocrine, as what I have been talking kanina pa, it secretes products directly into the bloodstream. So the endocrine function of the pancreas is limited to the cells of the islets of Langerhans, which are found all throughout the pancreas. Now, there are two types of cells of the pancreas glands, which are the alpha and beta cells. Now, for the alpha cells of the islets of Langerhans, these usually secretes glucagon, wherein this glucagon is the main responsible for increasing blood sugar level. So the glucagon also causes yung mga liver cells to break down glycogen to release glucose. Kasi as we all know, ang glycogen is the storage form of glucose. So the stimulus for glucagon release is a decrease in blood glucose to levels associated with fasting na tinatawag natin. Now after which, etong mga alpha cells na to could detect such decreases and eventually respond by secreting glucagon in proportion to the reduction in blood glucose. Then ano naman sa beta cells? So the beta cells of the eyelids of Langerhans secrete insulin, which is responsible for lowering the blood glucose level in the body of the animal. So etong insulin na to, this is very important for the uptake of glucose by many cells, including the skeletal muscle, which makes up most of the body mass of the animal. And if itong insulin na to will be insufficient, ang mangyayari is the glucose accumulates in the blood after a meal since it cannot be transported across the cell membranes into cells where it could be used as for fuel. And then the metabolic consequence of this insufficiency of insulin that is being created with this condition is called as diabetes mellitus, which is the best known endocrine disorder in the body. Okay? So wherein, pag sinabi natin na diabetes mellitus, meron tayong dalawang type niyan. Yung type 1 diabetes mellitus, which is insulin dependent. Ang nangyayari dito, I just jot it down since I have not included here in the presentation. Pag sinabi natin na type 1 diabetes mellitus, this is insulin dependent. Ang nangyayari dito is the immune system destroys pancreatic beta cells. Okay? So dinedestroy ng immune system yung mga pancreatic beta cells. Then for the type 2 diabetes mellitus or the non-insulin dependent, it involves insulin deficiency or reduced response of target cells due to change in insulin receptors. Okay? So that is for the pancreas. Now we move to the other endocrine gland, which is the adrenal gland that is being subdivided into two. First is the adrenal medulla. So dito, the two glands or the two adrenal glands are located dito sa kidney. Okay? Since from the word ad meaning towards, and then ren is kidney. Okay? So yun yung nanggaling yung adrenal na word. So from basic analysis, if cortex, outer region, as you can see in the picture. Pag medulla, inner region. So dito sa part na to ng adrenal gland, it usually secretes two hormones, which are the epinephrine and then the norepinephrine. So dito yung epinephrine hormone is being released in the bloodstream of the body of the animal in response to stress, such as if nagkaroon ng sugat yung animal or there was a shock or fear among them. So dito nare-release itong hormone na to kaya tinatawag siya na emergency hormone. So basically if nagkasugat or merong fear yung animal, then it will increase the heart rate of it. So parang ang main function nito is it prepares the body of the animal for its strenuous activities. Okay? For the norepinephrine, this is just mainly similar with the action of the first hormone, but it usually focuses on the maintenance of blood pressure. So in summary of these two hormones, the two hormones are basically released from the adrenal medulla in times of stress. And this release is regulated by the ANS or the autonomic nervous system. Okay? Just recall kung ano yung ginagawa ng autonomic nervous system. Now for the adrenal cortex, it usually secretes the aldosterone and then the glucocorticoids. So dito sa aldosterone hormone, it says here that it regulates sodium metabolism by reabsorbing sodium from the kidney tubules. So ibig sabihin, these functions in the regulation of sodium and potassium balance. So the regulation of balance is primarily accomplished by controlling the loss of sodium and potassium in the urine. Or in the other hand, it regulates. Okay? Nire-regulate niya yung salt and water balance sa katawan ng animal. Then for the glucocorticoids, it usually stimulate gluconeogenesis or the glucose formation in the body. So dito, ini-increase niya yung rate ng gluconeogenesis by the aid or help of liver. Pag glycogenolysis naman, this is the breakdown of glucose. So parang ang glucocorticoids ay it aids for the formation as well as breakdown of glucose. Then we move to the last endocrine gland, which are the gonads. So dito we have the ovaries, wherein we all know that the ovaries are the main reason for the production of ova in the help of, anong hormone na ulit yun? It is the follicle stimulating hormone or the FSH, which is being released by the anterior pituitary gland. And eventually, it produces the following hormones that I have said a while back. Yung estrogen, which is the female sex hormone, and responsible also for the secondary sex characteristics ng female animals for their desire to mate, as well as yung progesterone, which is the, ano na ulit yung progesterone? It is the hormone that is responsible for pregnancy or the gestation period ng animals, as well as the last hormone, which is the relaxin for the relaxation ng cervix when the animal is going to give birth. Paabyaw lang yung gagawin ko dito since we will be talking this one ulit sa reproductive system ng animals later on. Then we have the testes. As what I have said again kanina, with the aid of FSH, it produces the sperm cells that are viable in fertilizing the ova that are being produced by the ovaries. And then the testes is also responsible in the production of the male sex hormone, which is the testosterone. So gaya lang din siya ni estrogen na responsible also for the secondary sex characteristics ng mga lalaki na animal. Okay? So that's it. This is the end of my discussion about the endocrine system. I hope you have learned something about this. Thank you for listening.